A new flashpoint has just emerged in the war. The Pentagon is considering redirecting air defense interceptors that had been purchased by NATO European allies to the Middle East to strengthen protection for Ukraine. What's at stake here is simple to understand. Weapons paid for to defend Ukrainian cities against Russian missiles could end up being used to protect American troops and bases in the Gulf. This is happening now, at the end of March 2026, when the war against Iran is putting pressure on the United States stockpiles. And it changes the order of military priorities in Washington. The problem is that this shift in focus affects Ukraine at one of the most delicate moments on the front line. Russia launched nearly 1,000 long-range drones against Ukrainian territory in about 24 hours. And Volodymyr Zelensky once again warned about the risk of running out of air defense ammunition. While Washington focuses its military energy on the conflict with Iran, the PAC-3 missiles from the Patriot system, used both in the Gulf and in Ukraine, were already scarce. Before this new crisis, analysts interviewed by Reuters said at the beginning of March that the annual production, around 600 units, does not cover the American demand, the Gulfs, and Kyiv's at the same time. How does this work? Does it work? In practice, the purchase of these weapons goes through a NATO mechanism called Pearl, created so that allies and partners can pay for American armaments destined for Ukraine. The alliance itself states that this system has already moved billions of euros in vital military equipment for Kyiv, where this disruption becomes most visible in the link between Washington, Brussels, and the Gulf. Trump publicly attacked NATO and wrote that the alliance nations did absolutely nothing in response. The European reaction was cold. At a G7 meeting in France, allies demanded an end to attacks on civilians, advocated for a diplomatic solution, and made it clear that they do not want to be dragged into an offensive war launched without prior consultation. France, for example, spoke with about 35 nations about a future mission in the Strait of Hormuz, but defined this plan as strictly defensive and aimed at reopening navigation when the fighting subsides. Why did the Gulf take precedence over Ukraine? Because the Strait of Hormuz has become the center of economic and military risk. About 20% of the world's oil passes through there, and the war has already halted part of the maritime traffic. Gulf nations told the United States that it's not enough to just stop the shooting. It's necessary to permanently reduce Iran's ability to attack with missiles and drones and to use Hormuz as leverage. When the White House sees this scenario, the logic changes. First, protect bases, ships, energy routes, and regional allies, then decide what's left for other theaters of war. But the episode exposes a wound. Trust is under attack. For many European capitals, the message is harsh. If weapons intended for Ukraine can be pulled into another war whenever Washington deems it necessary, then the promise of strategic coordination within NATO carries less weight and doubt grows. In the end, that's what happened. The war against Iran stopped being just a regional crisis and started to directly affect Ukraine's defense, Europe's political resources, and NATO's credibility. With the dispute over interceptors, limited stockpiles, and conflicting military priorities. And why? Because the White House believes that the Gulf has become the most urgent front right now, while Europe is starting to realize that relying on the United States comes with an increasingly high strategic cost.